Well, good evening, at least in Sweden, everyone. This is Heidegger, 1701a. We have had some champagne and other stuff. I think the other one was cream liqueur. So we were all jolly here, and what is best to do once jolly? It is definitely Wittgenstein. And that is the article Wittgenstein, Mind Reading and Perception by Edmund Dain. And we are currently at the third paragraph on page 684, beginning with this too. We can have these two up to the top, closest to the black as possible. No, sorry. It's the champagne speaking. I want to have it at the bottom. Sorry, Kalle. Look out for champagne. Yes, exactly. That's the best one. We discussed last time that there is nothing underneath. You don't look outside the text for understanding what it is to mind read if you want. And when you say that you see the faces, that someone is angry, happy, it's not to be taken literal or empirical. It is how we use the word see in this context. Nothing more and nothing less. There's nothing beyond. Wittgenstein shows this to be a confusion in how we actually are using the words. No one on this planet ever says, I saw him angry. And by that meaning that they were looking at him in his face and he was angry. No, it's more like I realized he was angry, and he was angry maybe only. That maybe is the best. Never. I had a perception of his face, and there was certain redness on his nose and cheeks, and his eyes were glaring, and his voice were high. Then I could make the empirical conclusion that he had anger. No, it's never used that way, and anytime. And I continue my read. This too is a problem for the standard contrast between seeing and seeing that in this context. Because those expressions come apart in certain circumstances. The temptation is to treat them as two different modes of perception. But although they can come apart, the circumstances that license their use nevertheless overlap considerably. That is, the same set of circumstances in many cases license us to say both that I see so and so's anger and that I see that so and so is angry. We cannot, and this is important, therefore simply isolate one of these phenomena for empirical research. Since in many cases we have both simultaneously. And studying only those cases where they come apart will produce a distorted picture of what they involve. Whether or not we can isolate the relevant phenomena for empirical investigation, however, the objection to talk of seeing or perceiving in relation to others' mental states is not empirical, but conceptual. The claim is not that, in fact, when we look at the underlying process involved in seeing that so and so is angry, or in seeing the anger in the so and so's eyes, we find different kinds of brain process than those involved in the seeing that and that so and so's eyes are blue, or seeing the color of so and so's eyes. Rather, the claim is that there is no such thing as seeing others' mental states, that whatever is involved here, conceptually speaking, be a matter of seeing The way to respond to that kind of problem is not by means of an empirical investigation or a hypothesis about what empirical investigation may reveal, but to investigate the grammar of our concepts and how it comes to seem to us as if we cannot possibly see what we say that we see here. It is there, according to Wittgenstein, in the use of the term that we discover what seeing is. Eight. The grammar of mind reading. When Wittgenstein turns to that investigation, his claim is that there are both similarities and differences between what we call seeing in relation to others' thoughts and feelings, and what we call seeing elsewhere, such as in connection with the color or shape of an object. In Settle, for instance, having claimed that we see the glance of the eye and that he would take it for pure stupidity were someone to deny that, Wittgenstein continues. I should contradict anyone who told me that I saw the glance just the way I see the shape and color of the eye. What we are dealing with in these two cases, according to Wittgenstein, are different though related concepts of seeing and of what is seen. Hence, Wittgenstein claims, we can justify both the claim that we see others' thoughts and feelings, and the claim that we do not, in light of different aspects of our overall use of the term seeing. So do I see the impudence? Yes and no. Both answers can be justified. Wittgenstein then does not deny that there are significant differences between seeing colors or shapes and seeing others' thoughts and feelings. What he denies is only that there is something odd about our use of the word seeing in the context of the latter. Is it here as if I were perceiving a fourth dimension? Well, yes and no. Queer, however, it is not. From which you ought to learn that what strikes someone as queer when he is philosophizing is not queer. We make the assumption the word would really have to be used like this, and then we find the normal use extremely queer. Wittgenstein's aim is to clarify what it means to say that we see others' thoughts and feelings by describing the differences between those concepts, and in doing so, both to make sense of and to overcome the resistance we may feel to the use of the word seeing in connection with others' mental state. Wittgenstein brings out the difference between those concepts initially by comparing two different ways of representing a face in a picture. But now I am to say that I really see the fearfulness in this behavior, or that I really see the facial expression. Why not? But that is not to deny the difference between two concepts of what is perceived. A picture of the face might reproduce its features very accurately, but not get the expression right. It might, however, be right as far as the expression goes and not hit the features off well. Similar expression takes faces together in a quite different way from similar anatomy. Similarly, we could imagine someone who sees an animal's movement clearly and can as a result represent them accurately in pictures, but who is nevertheless unable to see the joy in them. One would like to say, we surely can't see the expression, the shy behavior, in the same sense as we see movement, shapes, and colors. What is there in this? Naturally, the question is not to be answered physiologically. Well, one does say that one sees with both the dog's movement and its joy. If one shuts one's eyes, one can see neither the one nor the other. But if one says of someone who could accurately reproduce the movement of the dog in some fashion in pictures, that he saw all there was to see, he would not have to recognize the dog's joy. So if the ideal representation of what is seen is the photographically, metrically exact reproduction in a picture, then one might want to say, I see the movement and somehow notice the joy. And here, time for a little look. Let me once more go into checking that grammar here is properly understood. Grammar in the Wittgensteinian approach is what is possible to do, or I often compare it, a saw cannot be used as a screwdriver. There are no rules against using it as a screwdriver, but its grammar is different. Its makeup. Saw is constructed, so there the metaphor falls, but language is natural, and Daddy Wittgenstein is looking for the word's natural habitat where they are participating. And of course, this is in stark contrast to all the philosophers today, still to this day. Until recently, it was shared by neurologists, scientists, that we couldn't perceive what people were thinking or feeling. And that, of course, is where we are now in the technological thinking. And there is an important quote here. We cut it short because this is going to be a short lecture. Third paragraph on 684. Whether or not we can isolate the third paragraph. Have you had it? Yeah, that's the one. whether or not we can isolate the relevant phenomena for empirical investigations, however. The objection to talk of seeing or perceiving in relation to others' mental states is not empirical, but conceptual. We're not looking for an underlying process. And to adding to the text instead of taking more sides, since this is a bit different. In the Wittgenstein approach, the same goes for objects. There are no objects in general. But if we see, for instance, a cupboard, we're not investigating the cupboardness in it. It doesn't have an ideal form. I perceive it and it is a cupboard. And sometimes, for good reasons, to explain something or to point to something in connection with other things, I would say it is a cupboard. But it is not permanently a cupboard. It doesn't do cupboarding when no one's around to interact with it, so to speak. In parenthesis, I will not go into this, but Wittgenstein solves a lot of problems with the collapse of the superposition. And another thing that is mentioned further down here, the claim is not that, in fact, when we look at the underlying process involved in seeing so-and-so is angry, or in seeing the anger in so-and-so's eyes, we find different kinds of brain process than those involved in seeing that so-and-so's eyes are blue, seeing the color of so-and-so's eyes. There are no absolute difference in brainwaves. And I will have a spoiler here. There is not a connection either between a so-called original as a brain process and what we perceive, if we want to use that word, either. So it's a bit more. Before Kalle, maybe some comments?
Yes, indeed. Let me dig up Zenon's paradox. Let me see if I can find a good image. Build Zenon's paradox. A good image sells more than 1,000 words. Let me see. Which one to see a good image somewhere? The hare and the turtle. I don't know. The hare. Let us take if you can find the hare.
The fifth one to the right. That's pretty good.
I mean, this. Yes, thank you.
That's beautiful.
Yes, thank you. Let me see. It's a little bit small. Let's see if we can make it somewhat bigger. Let me see the image. This is a video. I don't want a video. Let me see. Here. Let me put like this.
Oh, wow. Look at that. I like that one.
Perhaps you already get my point. So let me return to the text before we look at the. So this phrase, as you already mentioned, is important. Whether or not we can isolate relevant phenomena of empirical investigation. So I think this is very important. Isolation. The modern thinking and modern analytic thinking emphasizes isolation, and they forget about the movement. Movement is primordial.
Yes.
and you see that in Zenon he forgets movement. He thinks that everything is. So his point is that, let's say, Achilles, he has to first go, let's say, 1 meter, but by the time he has done 1 meter, then he has to go half of the of that length, and then half of the length, and half of the length, and half of the... So he never catches the turtle according to paradox.
No.
But he makes a mistake of forgetting movement. In real life, there is a movement.
Yes.
And there was something similar here already, what you said here. Let me see exactly what it. Let me. And we already, yes, in the lecture from history, we mentioned that everything is in relation to the world. Concepts are relevant only in relation to the world, so you cannot isolate them.
No, they can't be isolated, as in the example with Achilles and the tortoise.
And as you mentioned, the origin and all for...
Yeah, we are looking at origin, and in the turtle and the tortoise and Achilles, space and time are also isolated in a very peculiar way. Like you could have time without space, so you can half space. That is the running distance of Achilles. You can sort of half it, and time is somewhere else. And this is also sort of an isolating, that it's not proper understanding how we use language, whether we are Greeks of antiquity or today. It's never used that way, ever.
Yes, indeed. And the what to say, the with the emphasis on origin is lies in the problem that people forget about movement.
Yeah, definitely.
Same mistake that Indians and many authors do. This fixation with origin without movement. Let me see.
We need to prove everything, and if you go even further on that scale, for instance, autistic people, they might need proof for somebody's happy, or even to the extent that they need proof that something is situated in front of their eyes. McKilchrist is pointing to that way of seeing things is becoming progressively more common. And that's, I would say, that's an effect of this weird technological original thinking. For instance, if there is a Bible, say, to take the revelation, why is it original? Why is it true? Because I see it as such. And today we think that is a low way of talking. It's hierarchically much less of truth to it than proving it or showing it by comparison or going back to some other source. This is not how we used to see it at all. No. And it goes against quantum physics as well.
And it was actually this phrase that made me think about Zenon's paradox. So Wittgenstein writes, so if the ideal representation of what is seen is the photographical, metrically exact reproduction in the picture, the moment that I see the movement and so what notice the joy.
Yeah.
Okay, in ideal representation, but Zenon did not see the ideal representation. Or perhaps he saw a kind of Platonic ideal representation in the ideal world. I don't know. In the Platonic world, there is no movement.
No.
But you don't really have a joy either in the Platonic world, perhaps.
No, there's no joy. There's no aesthetics. And as we know today, most people, I think the absolute majority, they don't see a soul in another person, and that's a new phenomenon. And the consequences, of course, to that are enormous, to say the least. But still, although that everybody tries to do that, it's not how we use language proper.
Perhaps we should end there.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, still worked with champagne and everything.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you very much for participating, Kalle Lundahl. Thank you everyone for seeing, hearing, watching. Have a beautiful morning, day, afternoon, or evening. Bye-bye.